Welcome to the True You Summit. I'm Carrie Rubin, your summit host and Chief Mom Officer at the Modern Mom Society. I'm excited to bring you this summit to help you get the tools you need to live an authentic and joyful mom life that's aligned to what your body, soul, and mind desires. I hope you enjoyed this limited time free interview with one of the 15 experts that are here to discuss how you can get closer to your true you. Each day of the summit, we will explore 5 different areas of your life where you can improve your connection to your true you as a busy mom. Parenting, mom life, authenticity, spirituality, and mind and body. You'll have 24 hours free access to listen to the 3 experts discussing the topic of the day. Otherwise, you can purchase lifetime access to these life-changing series of interviews. There are 2 different packages available. The basic package, which includes all 15 interviews in MP3 format, can be purchased for $29, or the deluxe package, which includes all 15 interviews in audio, video, and transcript format, so you can get this great information whichever way you prefer. Plus, the deluxe package also includes bonus PDFs. One is the How to Connect to Your True You guide. It highlights the ways that the experts shared in their interview as to how they personally connect to their true selves, as well as the common ideas and themes throughout. So if you're new to connecting to your true you, or you're out of practice, you can start trying on these different ways of getting in tune with your inner wisdom, intuition, and true self right away. The second bonus PDF is Key Takeaways from the Summit. As I was recording all of these interviews, I noticed common themes and threads throughout. And this bonus document highlights these keys, so you'll be sure to get the most important ideas and begin to make shifts towards a happier, joyful, more aligned, and more fulfilled mom life today. The $29 and $59 prices for the basic and deluxe packages are good now through the end of the summit on May 10th. After that, the prices will go up to $59 and $89 respectively. So if you think you're going to miss any of these great interviews, or you'll know you want to have lifetime access to them, be sure to grab your True You Summit package upgrade today. Here's today's interview. I hope you enjoy it. Hi, and welcome to the True You Summit presented by the Modern Mom Society. I'm Carrie Rubin, your summit host and Chief Mom Officer at the Modern Mom Society. I'm excited to bring you the summit to help you get the tools you need to live an authentic and joyful mom life that is aligned to what your body, soul, and mind desires. Today's expert is Sunit Suchdev. Sunit is a mindset and business coach, author, and speaker who inspires women to live in their highest vibration. With a passion for holistic health and wellness, she combines her passions to guide women in living their best lives in mind, body, and soul. Sunit and I have traveled in some of the same Facebook circles for a while, and I've kept an eye on what she's been up to. And based on the bio I just read, you can see why I reached out to her for this summit. She couldn't be a more perfect fit, right? We have a really great conversation about being in a state of high vibration, what that means, why you should strive for it, and what you can do to move towards having a high vibe life, which also happens to be the title of her podcast. One of the main things that will get you into a high vibe life is serving yourself first, which may seem counterintuitive to what we've been taught we should be doing as a mom. So Sunit and I dig into some of the big obstacles that get in the way of us putting ourselves first, like finding time for yourself, what to do about well-meaning and opinionated people giving you advice, and finding ways to get the help you might need. You ready for this awesome interview? Here it is. Welcome to the True You Summit, Sunit. I'm so excited to have you here because it seems like what the topic of the summit is 100% your jam. So glad to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes, this is totally my jam, and I am super excited to chat with you today.
All right, so let's dive in. I want to learn a little bit more about high vibe life. I have a feeling that there are some people who are not super familiar with that. So can you explain what high vibe means and why it's important for moms to live from that space?
Yeah, so, when you break it down and people talk about vibration, right? When you kind of dig into like spirituality and laws of the universe and all that, vibration really is just, it's energy and it's frequency. And, if you've ever walked into a room and you've felt that energy, like, wow, the vibe in there was so good tonight. Or you said the opposite, man, you could cut the tension with a knife in there.
Yeah.
That is vibration. That's frequency, because we as human beings all operate depending on our mood, depending what's going on with us, we have a certain energy and vibration about us. So living a high vibe life to me really means that it doesn't mean that your physical energy always needs to be good. You need to be happy all the time. It's not about that, but it's about living a life that is aligned with your purpose. You feel good about the decisions you're making, the way you're parenting. I know we're talking a lot to moms today, and everything's coming from that place of that good energy. And, just actually, I don't know if you've ever heard of Danielle Laporte, but just on Saturday night, I was very, very grateful to be in a very intimate setting with her and another speaker. And we ended off that evening with this meditation. And the person who was guiding the meditation, he had everybody doing these I think it's like Tai Chi or Qigong or something, some kind of, artsy martial arts kind of thing. And he had people moving their hands. And there was a one point where he got everybody to hold, pretend like they're holding this ball of energy and bringing it close to their hands like this, bringing their hands close together and bring them farther apart. And it was such a moment of truth for me that validated everything that I always say, because in that moment when he was guiding everyone to hold that energy between their hands at the same time, his mic started giving feedback.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
It was great. And then he goes, oh, that happens all the time. Every time I do this, that happens, because it's a real thing, whether you believe it or not. There is energy all around us, and what we emit and radiate, when it comes together with other people's high vibes, it can really be super powerful. So the high vibe life and, my podcast and everything stems from that place of just inspiring women to live from a place of authenticity, truth, in alignment, and keeping that vibe and that frequency high in their lives.
And that doesn't mean you're in a good mood all the time, right?
No, because that's going to go up and down and change, right? But it's more of, and I actually just did a podcast episode on this morning about how oftentimes we're raised to think that happiness is the destination, and we're not really taught to just sit in your sorrow. It's okay to be sad for a few days. It's okay to be depressed when your dad dies, or, you don't have to be happy all the time. It's more about being aligned and being okay with, okay, I had a couple of bad days, and you know what? I'm just going to cry and let it out, and that's okay. Not beating yourself up over it. So it's not so much your emotions, but it's the intention and are you fighting those emotions? If you're sad and you're like, I shouldn't be sad, I need to go to the doctor and get put on antidepressants because I shouldn't be sad all the time. That is a misalignment of what is and what you think should be. So living from a high vibe place really means that you're okay with that, and you understand that sometimes that's going to happen and you're okay with it. So it's going with the flow. It's being in alignment. It's not necessarily having anything to do with your mood or your physical energy, but more of how you sit with it all.
Yeah, that is a great explanation of it. And I feel like, we're always chasing happiness and the end game. And it's really not about that. It's about living with intentionality and gratitude in the day to day.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I feel like as moms, there are so many obstacles that we have in getting into that high vibe space, because we're always busy, or you've got other people's needs to take care of. So what do you feel like are the most common obstacles for moms getting into that high vibe space, and what can they do to overcome it?
Well, I think the biggest one is that they put themselves last. So you have to recognize that actually, if you want to live from that place of being aligned, you have to know what makes you feel like you're in alignment. And oftentimes, what makes us feel like we're in alignment is completely the opposite of what we're taught to believe is the way we should parent. So, we're raised in this society that makes us feel like we should be able to do it all, and you got to put your kids first, and you have to sacrifice everything for them, and you should eat last and sleep less, and sacrifice for them whatever they want to do, all of these things. And you kind of start to feel guilty because you're like, well, am I enough? Am I doing enough? You feel guilty if you go to work. You feel guilty if you're not there for every breath they take. So the first barrier, I think, is that it's a understanding. I think as women today, we really need to start to break down some of the belief systems that have come up around how we should parent, and understand that you can never, and this is so cliche, but I'm just going to say it, like, you know, the whole, like, put on your own mask before helping others, or, you know, you can't pour from an empty cup, but it's just so true. And, you know, if you think that filling your cup first is selfish, then that's going to be a barrier to you finding that true happiness. So I think the first thing to do is to recognize that it's totally okay to be selfish. And a lot of people even have an issue with that word, right? They don't like to proudly say, yeah, I'm being a little selfish. Like, that's okay with me, because even that word has such a negative oh my God, you're a mom and you're being selfish. Oh, shame on you. It's a horrible thing to do. But, you know, I always equate it to this. This has happened to me a lot since my kids have started school, because I'm dropping them off and I'm picking them up. And oftentimes I'm working in my office until, like, you know, the last minutes I can squeeze out before I got to go pick them up. And sometimes my car is out of gas, and I will have noticed beforehand, oh yeah, my car is almost out of gas. I got to leave the house a little earlier today to go, you know, get the kids, because I got to get gas first. But there have been many times where I have forgotten to do that. And then I'm literally like 10 minutes, you know, it's 10 minutes to pick up. I'm 15 minutes away from school still, but I don't have gas. So what do? Do you keep going and risk running out of gas on the way to picking them up? Or do you stop and recognize, okay, this is going to make me a little more late, but I need to get gas before I get there. And every time I stop and I fill up with gas, because I don't know if I'll actually make it to pick them up if I don't get gas. So this is the analogy I always use, you know, like, yeah, you might be able to keep going and push through for many, many years, but at some point you're operating from a place of depletion, and that's going to catch up with you. So the first kind of step in living this type of life is to recognize that and really get connected into what fills your cup. What can you do for yourself first before you do for anybody else? And, you know, that speaks to this whole topic of self-care, but self-care doesn't mean, oh, I'm going to have a bath or go to the spa. It just means, what do I need to do to just feel at ease, feel like I'm coming from a place of expansiveness and space, and I'm not stressed out. And maybe for some people that is a little time away. Maybe you go away with your girlfriends, or maybe you go to the gym, you prioritize working out, or maybe you're feeding your body nourishing food and that's your priority. Whatever it is for you, I think that's like the first barrier.
For sure. Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Like, why is it that moms have been put in this space of they have to put themselves last and everybody else first? I mean, I think our moms came from that generation where that's what they did, and they sacrificed. And my mom was pretty miserable, and it showed, you know what I mean? But that's what they were grown to or taught was how it was. Like, you were supposed to sacrifice. And I feel like my parents have a hard time seeing me working full time, having vacations and doing stuff with my friends, and, you know, leaving my kids with the grandparents. And I feel like that is better for everybody else all around, because it makes me a better parent, because I'm in a good headspace. Like, if you feel like your cup is full, you can parent from an entirely different place. I feel like, you know, I see moms on Facebook, you know, like, oh, I'm yelling, I need to have a yell chart so I don't do it so much anymore. And I think it's just because they're burnt out and they have no buffer, right?
Absolutely. They're completely exhausted, and they, you know, like I said, you may not think you need it right away, but eventually you get pushed to that limit. And you're so right about our parents' generation. Like, my mom sacrificed so much. Guess what? Now my mom's in her late 60s, and she doesn't know how to just be a person. All she knows how to do is be a mom. She's been all about her kids and sacrificing for her kids all these years. And now it's like, well, we don't need you anymore. We have our own lives. We don't all live in the same city. But she's still kind of like, all she knows how to do is like sacrifice and be a mom. So, you know, and I'm so glad, because the other part of this conversation is that I recognized that this was happening. So I made those changes myself before I had kids. But what are we modeling for our kids? What are we modeling for our our daughters and our sons. You know, I don't have daughters, but I have boys, and I sure hope that they see that it's okay when, you know, they go on to get married, if they were to get married and they have a wife, let's say. I want them to see that, you know, mom has her own thing, and she does go away with her friends sometimes, and she does do these other things that are important to her. So what are we modeling for our kids, right? So I think that's that self-care, whatever you want to call it, that piece is the number one kind of thing. The second part is, after that, it's making sure that you are in control and not the other way around. Like, you don't want your life to be running you. And that this kind of factors into self-care as well. It's like, you want to know on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, what are the things that you need to say no to? What are the things, you know, the people pleasing, the boundary creating, the goal setting, all of those little pieces that can oftentimes, it's like our priorities just get completely misplaced, right? Like, let's take extracurricular activities for example.
That's a big one for me. My kids, I'm like, you can do one thing, maybe two, you know. I am not. I mean, and my kids are still youngish, 8 and 6. So, but I think a lot of their classmates have multiple things throughout the week, and
same here.
Let them be kids, you know. Let them have downtime at home. They need downtime at home to kind of regroup as much as they need those extracurricular activities.
Exactly. I had a guest on my podcast a couple months ago. She wrote a book about this. Her name's Pam Lobley, and she wrote a book. I think it was called "Why Can't We Just Play?" What I learned when I pulled my kids out of, you know, extracurricular activities or something like that was the title of the book. But she talks about this a lot, in that A, it's good for kids, but B, it's good for us as moms. Like, you get to decide. You're the parent. You get to decide whether they're in a million extracurricular activities. And, you know, if that brings you joy, this is where it becomes really important to learn to say no to what doesn't serve you. If it brings you joy, if you're a proud hockey mom, or you're, you know, you're one of those moms that grew up that way and sports are important to you, or extracurricular activities, and that brings you joy to be carting your kids around and doing all that, that's awesome. But if you're the mom, but if you're the mom that's sitting on the sidelines and you're watching your kid play soccer and you're on the phone and you're busy with email and you're stressed out, and then you're complaining to your girlfriends that you don't have time for anything else, then maybe you need to reevaluate what's really going on here. So really honoring your boundaries and knowing what makes you feel good and what doesn't make you feel good, and just saying no to the things that are not serving you. We don't do that enough. We just do it because we think we have to, or, you know, what are all the other moms at school going to say, or what's that person doing? And we're not really coming from, again, that high vibe place of authentic alignment where we can say with confidence, yeah, you know what? My son is not in any extracurricular activities because that's not for us. That stresses me out. So, you know, you have to come from a good, confident place of understanding yourself and not really worrying about what anyone else is doing. So I think that's the second piece. And if you can master those two things, and because there's a lot there that you got to peel away the layers of, you know, think, okay, what am I saying yes to that I should be saying no to? So once you can get there, then I think there's a whole opportunity for just living that high vibe life where you're making more room and time to do the things that put you first, care for you first, fill up your cup. You're saying no to what doesn't serve you. You're not stressed out. You are making time for more of what brings you joy, you know, finding your purpose, your passions, and then it can all just flow. It feel a lot better.
Yeah, I definitely try to live from that space. But the place that I've found that I have the most trouble with is figuring out what does feel aligned to me, because I have been bending to what society thinks I should be doing, what my parents think I should be doing, what, you know, the community thinks I should be doing. How do you tease all of that away and get to the true you of what is aligned?
I'm so glad you asked that, because you asked me before we started recording about the fact that I've had a brand change, right? So I used to be Modern Mommy Prep School, and it eventually became High Vibe Life, but that was my whole intention when I started Modern Mommy Prep School, was because I did these exercises with my husband before we had kids, because I was surrounded by women who were having babies and they were just dropping like flies. They were completely losing themselves. They were putting their husbands on the back burner. Life was stressful. They couldn't juggle it all. And I started really digging into like, why does this happen to us? And so, I created the podcast for that reason. And then I created this online course called Modern Mommy Prep School that really was getting women to dig into what really matters, parent from a place of intention and purpose, understand what kind of kids you want to raise, what you value. And so now that I'm not fully doing that anymore because I don't work with new and expecting moms, I still bring those principles into guiding women today. So that comes up a lot. Well, how do I know what does feel good to me? Well, this is where you really have to first accept and recognize that nothing else matters except for what's going on in your own four walls. So if that's your kids and you have a husband or a partner, that is all that matters. And your parents and your friends and society and Facebook and Pinterest are not dictating what feels aligned to you. The alignment has to come from within. And I always encourage, so I give women these exercises to do. I'll say the first thing I want you to do is sit down and I want you to think about who you were before you became a mom. What used to light you up? What did you want to do when you grew up? What are the things that you used to do with your friends? What did you do for fun? And it's just like a free writing exercise to really get connected in with who you were, because oftentimes we completely forget who we were, right? We don't lose a piece of ourselves, we lose all of ourselves. So really getting connected into that. Talk with your partner. What did your partner love about you when you guys decided to get married? And what did that person appreciate about you at that time? And really start to bring that back up. That's a great way to get really reconnected in with yourself. And then taking it to your partner and having that conversation with your partner about what makes each of you kind of light up. What are the things that, because it's not just us as moms, right? We need support from our partners. So if you're lucky enough to have one around, then this conversation has to be a two-way street, because they have to recognize that, if you're happy, everybody's going to be happy. So hopefully they can be a part of this conversation where you sit down and you talk about that. Okay, listen, these are the things that I need to be able to do more of or less of in order to feel whatever, less stressed, living a more purposeful life, whatever that is. And then you want to also talk about your kids. Okay, what are our values, not our parents' values? Right. Yes, talk about how you were raised. What did you love about the way you were raised? I had this conversation with my husband. We used to talk about that. Okay, how were we raised? What are some of the things, traditions that we had? Did we go on family vacations? Did we not? What did we value? What do we want to change about the way we do? And then you get on the same page, and that's all that matters. Because again, we're the parents, we get to decide, right? Anytime my mom wants to offer her advice on what I'm doing, I'm like, you had your turn. Okay, you had your turn.
That's a big one for me. That's a big one for me, because my parents they're really specific ideas of how it should go. And it's hard for me to be like, you're done.
Well, I don't actually say that to her.
I know what you mean.
I do have respect for her, but I will, and obviously this doesn't happen overnight. For me, I have been doing this since the day I got pregnant, right? I've been having this conversation, and of course my mom always wants to chime in, and but over time they do get it, and I'll say, Mom, you had 3 kids. You had your chance to raise them how you wanted, and you did a great job. You did an awesome job, but the world we live in today is different than it was 40 years ago. And so I have to parent from that place. So I hope that you trust the job that you did with me. And I say this to my mom a lot, like, you raised great kids, and I hope that you can trust that you raised great kids who are then going to turn around and make great parents. And over time, they will start to respect you. I remember my in-laws, we had this situation with my in-laws as well. When I was pregnant, I was having twins. Everybody's like, oh my God, you're having twins. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to need help, this and that. And in the early days, they were often trying to tell us what to do and how to do it. And then one day my father-in-law came over and he saw a stack of parenting books on my coffee table. Mm-hmm. And after that, they didn't really bug me that much anymore, because I think they got it. They were like, okay, she knows what she's doing. They never read any books on how to be parents, right? They were just flying by the seat of their pants. So,
totally.
and I'm not saying that that's the case for everybody. Like, obviously for my family, that kind of struck a chord with them. So they were like, okay, she's reading all these parenting books. She gets it. They get what's going on. So I think it's really getting super, super clear and aligned on what you value. What kind of kids are we trying to raise? What's important to us? What are the qualities that are important to us? And then how are we going to foster those in them? And it's not about, like for us, like I always use this example, talking about the extracurricular activities. We were like, okay, we're doing one extracurricular activity. What's that going to be? And from day one, we knew we wanted to raise kids who were respectful, disciplined, confident. And at a very young age, like the age of 3, when we were trying to decide, okay, we want to put them in something, what should we put them in? We put them in karate because it aligned with our values. Now we are surrounded by super athletes and parents of super athletes who are like, I live in Canada. Hockey's a huge thing here. Everybody wants their kid to be an NHL hockey player. And I was like, well, but when you look at what we value, we don't really care if our kid ends up being an NHL hockey player. So when we couldn't decide what to put them in, we decided to put them in something that aligned with our values. And we didn't really care what anybody else was doing. We did what was best for us. So I think this is really important. It's like, look who's in the 4 walls of your home, and that's who you talk to about it. And everybody else, as well-meaning as your parents are, and as well-meaning as your best friend, who maybe she's raised 7 kids and she has advice for you, that's great. You can take what you need from that, but leave the rest. I have this saying, is that I never take advice from anybody who has not been where I'm going. So yeah, my parents raised great kids. That's awesome. But I have different goals for my kids and hopes for my kids and for our life together. And so we do things based on where we want to end up in life. And if some well-meaning person is giving you advice, that's great. But, I did this a lot when I was pregnant. I wasn't really asking for parenting advice from women who didn't seem to have it together themselves, right? Like women who are just completely falling apart. I'm not asking them for parenting advice. I was talking to the women who had twins, looked like they had it together, and maybe their kids were a little older and they were really well behaved. I remember walking, my husband and I love to eat good food, so we go to these like really nice restaurants, like fancy restaurants, and there's been a couple times where we'd walk into a restaurant and there's a family sitting there with like a really well behaved 3-year-old, and I was full on pregnant, and I would literally walk right up to them and be like, your child is so well behaved, like I'm having babies. Can you tell me, like, what's your secret, right? So I'm taking cues and guidance from the people who have been where I want to go, and I'm not really paying attention to the rest of the noise. So I think that's really important too. And if somebody is having trouble kind of drowning all that out, that's really a good way to think about it.
Yeah, what resonates, what feels good. It's easy for me, being the recovering perfectionist that I was. I would always be one to like read a book and be like, okay, this is the manual, this is how you do it. But then, as parenting went on, I realized that's not how it rolls, and you got to do with what feels good for you. And I find that for a lot of moms, it seems to be difficult for them to tease stuff away, but also if they're in that space of just trying to get through the day-to-day and they are shouldering everything themselves, their cup is empty, they don't feel like they have support, where do they start? And how do they set up their life? I mean, for me, it's been from day one. Like, my husband has always helped, and I'm fortunate to have both sets of grandparents nearby that can help out. But I don't know that that's the case for everybody. So what advice do you have for women in that position?
Well, first of all, I think it goes back to understanding those 2 first principles, which is like the putting yourself first, right? And just really kind of getting clear on what makes you feel good, what stresses you out. And then when you pinpoint those things, you know, asking for help is a form of self-care. A lot of women just, I don't know what it is, but we don't like to ask for help, or, you know, somebody will
like let go of control, I think, is the other.
Yes, that's a huge one. The letting go of control. You know, people will offer to help you and you'll be like, nope, I've got it, even though you don't. I'm a recovering perfectionist as well. You know, there was a time when I would never ask anybody for help. I wanted to show that I've got it. I've got this. I'm the Pinterest perfect mom. I'm doing it all. And that is exhausting. And, you know, I suddenly just realized, I have kids now and I can't be a perfectionist anymore. Life is different. And the more I fight that, the more it's just going to stress me out. Nobody's benefiting here. So I think that the asking for help piece is huge. And if you're lucky enough to have, you know, and I recognize, just like you, I am very lucky. I have a good relationship with my husband. We can communicate. We talked ahead of time about, you know, his role in their lives and the gender roles within the home and who, like all of that. And in our home, that's not a huge thing. It's like he does whatever is needed when it's needed. I do whatever is needed.
Right.
But I recognize that in some homes that may not be the case. And I have empathy for those people. And if if there's a deep-rooted issue there, then you need to get help in that area.
Right.
So obviously right now I'm speaking to the women who do have a partner who, you know, men just operate differently. Men will say, well,
if you give them direction, they'll do it.
Yes, exactly. You know, a lot of women.
Hey, can you make dinner tonight? My husband's like, sweet, happy to. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Right. Like I just had this conversation the other day with somebody about that. It's like, oh, well, why should, you know, men will say, all you got to do is ask. And women are like, I shouldn't have to ask.
I shouldn't have to ask. Right. But that's just not how they work.
Yeah. Or men will offer to do it and they'll do it. And then the woman's just nitpicking apart every single thing that they've done. So this goes back to, again, you know, I taught this in Modern Mommy Prep School. You want to sit down and have those conversations with your partner ahead of time about what does that look like? What do you need for them to do in order to help you? And then when you figure out how they're going to help you, just let them help you. Like, just let them do it without complaining about how they did it. Maybe they didn't change the diaper just perfectly the way you would change it. You know? But like as a mom, for me, yes, of course, there were things that my husband would do and I'd be like, oh my God. But, you know, I learned to leave the room. Well, then it's like, you just leave the room and, you know, I would go away and it's actually fascinating. You know, I would go like on a girls trip with my girlfriends and people would be like, oh, you're going away this weekend? Well, who's taking care of the kids? I'm like, well, I'm not a single parent. Their dad is taking care of them. And, you know, it just doesn't occur to people that he is capable of doing everything that I'm capable of doing. Now, I would not have been able to leave had I held onto my old perfectionist ways.
Yes.
Because I would be obsessing, especially with twins, right?
Yes.
Like we have them on in order for us, we did not have both grandparents around. We were completely on our own. And so, you know, one of the ways that we got through having twins and it just being the two of us was we had our kids on a tight schedule. Like everything had to be done, you know, according to the clock. And I remember feeling a little bit stressed out, like, okay, is he going to make sure that he gets all this done? And he's got them, you know, when they're babies, they need to go to sleep and they have naps. But, you know, had I held on to that, I would have never been able to leave the house.
Right.
I needed to trust that he also has their best intentions. That's their best intentions at the front of his heart. And however he gets it done, he will get it done. He will figure it out.
He'll do it in his way. And your kids benefit from two different styles too.
Exactly.
And especially if you trust them from the very beginning, they'll figure it out just like we figured it out. Certainly we have a little bit of motherhood instinct that guys don't necessarily have. But a lot of that, especially being like a full-time parent, having them there 100% of the time, you kind of figure it out as you go. And I've seen moms who have middle schoolers or even kids that are in grade school who need to give like explicit instructions on what to do with the kids if they leave. I'm like, that's appalling. How could you go that long without letting your husband figure it out?
Totally. Yeah. I share this all the time. I talk about this on my Instagram. I do these stories on Instagram. I remember, you know, leaving to go away it was going to be 5 days and my husband was going to have to you hold the fort. I was going away for a work meeting, and this was not new for us. When I was in the corporate world, I used to have to travel for work. So it was very normal for us. And I remember seeing all the other women that I was going away with talking about how stressed out they were. They were leaving. They had to make all these lists and, you know, put these sticky notes everywhere and reminders how to do everything. And you know what? Like, again, I really don't judge. It's like, if that makes you feel better.
Right.
And you think that helps your husband and that makes you feel like you're operating from a place of alignment, then great, go for it. However, if it's causing you stress before you're going away and you're like, oh my God, like I'm going away, I got to do X, Y, Z. And I got to, you know, and I had somebody ask me like, well, don't you want to make it easier for your husband when you leave? And I'm like, well, I don't really look at it as making it easier for him. He's their dad and he can do things in his own way. I don't need to lay out for him. Don't forget to, you know, make their lunches, and don't forget to, this is what they should have for dinner every night. No, he's a grown man. And in fact, you know, I would argue, and I know this is my husband doesn't want me to do anything for him. He's like, I'm a grown man. I can take care of my kids. It might not be exactly the way you do it, but I'm going to do it my way. And guess what, ladies? That makes them feel good too. It makes a man loves nothing more than to feel like he is useful, and a bit able to take care of two small kids. Like, you know, men like to feel like they can fix things, they can take care of things. And so when you're constantly holding their hand and doing everything for them, to me personally, I just think it can also be very like emasculating in a way. It's like, okay, I'm going to tell you exactly how you have to do this. So, you know, and we could talk, that's a whole other topic.
I know it is.
But
one other thing though is that, and if they do make a mistake, your kids will be fine. You know, we'll figure it out and learn from it, right?
Exactly. I remember having, one of my best friends was getting married in a city, like, you know, you had to take a plane ride to get there. And she announced her wedding when I was just pregnant with my twins. And at the time that the wedding was happening, they were going to be about 6 months old. And when I was pregnant, I was like, awesome, you know, we'll fly, we'll go to the wedding, blah, blah, blah. Well, once they came and I really realized, okay, are we really going to get on a plane with 6-month-old twins and go away to another city where we have to stay in a hotel? It was going to be this big Indian wedding with like all these, you know, multiple days of festivities. And really, I wanted to go to the wedding and I wanted to be a part of her wedding and enjoy without stress. And I knew that that was not going to happen if I had my 2 6-month-old kids with me, right? Like there's just no way I was going to be able to be completely present in that wedding. And so a decision was made that I would go and my husband would stay home with the kids. And they were young, like to leave your kids who are, you know, you're pumping and you're breastfeeding. And I mean, oh gosh, it was not something that I was excited for, but it kind of seemed like the better option. And, you know, it was not easy to let go of that kind of like that control. But I went with the attitude that he knows what he's doing. He's going to do it his way. And as long as I come home to kids who are happy, healthy, fed, like it doesn't really matter how he got them there. And that has been my motto every time now. Anytime I'm going to go anywhere, do anything, or, you know, want to go away. And over the years, we built up that trust, right? I go away and he's fine. And so I think that's what we have to really be concern ourselves with is this unloading a load off of you? Yes. Great. Take it. Yeah. And it's okay to do that. So I think, you know, asking for help, telling them exactly what you need, eliminating excess off your plate, saying no to what doesn't serve you, all of these things one at a time are definitely going to add to you living that kind of more joyful, easier life.
Beautiful. Well said. Do you have any other final tips before we close out?
No, I think, you know, I'm just really passionate about inspiring women to change the story. It's been years of me watching this story of like, we have to put ourselves on the back burner. We have to sacrifice. I have to put my kids first. I have to sacrifice my hopes and dreams. I'm always talking about, all the things I'm not getting done. And my dream is that we are getting to a place, hopefully, like evolving to a place where, this is going to sound, I don't know, some people are offended by this, but I think women can have it all. Maybe not all at once. Your life's not going to be perfect, but if you want to have kids and you want to start a business or you want to live this great life, it's not always going to be easy, but I do believe that you can have everything that you want. And so my dream is that I see women slowly starting to talk about all the amazing things they're doing instead of everything they're not getting done. And that's part of living that high vibe life too. Like you mentioned gratitude earlier. And I run this 30-day mindset shift challenge in my private group where I literally walk people through 30 days of changing their vibe. And the kind of 5 things that I say are necessary to do that are: thing number 1, start to give gratitude every day. It instantly raises your vibration when you come from a place of appreciating what you have. Start to make space for getting quiet, whether that's meditation, whether it's mindfulness, whether it's taking a few deep breaths, whether it's sitting with your coffee in the morning for 5 minutes and not checking email, but just sitting there. Getting quiet and giving yourself that mental space is a really great way to start to shift your vibration and change your mindset. The third way is what I already talked about, which is reconnecting in with who you are, what brings you joy, what are your strengths, what are your passions, what are your gifts, and then, like sitting with those and allowing your life to unfold in a way where you can do more of that stuff. The fourth thing I put on there is to have bigger hopes and dreams for yourself than just focusing on getting through the day. Sometimes we get so caught up, we're so stressed out, living from one minute to the next, so easily overwhelmed that we forget that that's not the purpose of life. The purpose of life is to do big things and enjoy your life and have big hopes and dreams and put them out there. Don't just think about them, but really say it out loud. What do you want for yourself and for your family? And then finally, getting rid of what doesn't serve you. So creating those boundaries, saying no to what doesn't serve you. If you can do those 5 things, like truly do them, not just, say do them, but then make them a practice, like make the gratitude and the mindset or the mindfulness or the meditation a daily practice. Really eliminate the negativity and what doesn't serve you. If you can do all those things, I truly believe that every woman could be living, just her most high vibe life. And to add on to that, when we are living from that place, I think the future will look very different than it does today. Because I think we can all agree that we are in a time right now that's really scary and really sad. And, you can look at it politically or however, but there's not a lot about what's going on today that excites me, to be honest with you. When, when you turn on the TV and you see what's going on in the news and in the world, and it's like, ugh, so gross.
Yeah.
I want to have a part in raising a different kind of the future. Right? Yeah, like our kids, right? Like my kids are 6, they're turning 7, and in another 20 years, they're going to be out there. So if I can serve myself first and come from this authentic, aligned place and really infuse them with that. Like imagine if we all did that. We raise the future and suddenly everything changes.
For sure.
So I would encourage anybody who's listening to this today to think from that perspective. Nothing good comes out of being the martyr and just living in that place all the time. Take action. Like we're responsible. We get to decide. So when you take that action, it's not just for you. It affects everybody around you, including your kids.
Amen. One last question for you is, how do you connect to your true you?
Well, I've done the exercises, right? I know what lights me up. I know what my gifts and my strengths are. I'm really, really so through this work I've done on myself. And this is why I do it now, right? I see what an effect it's had on me. And so I've turned it into a business of helping other women achieve it. So really just knowing what's my zone of genius, what brings me joy, what lights me up, when am I the happiest? and just doing more of that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, connecting in with that person. Like, you know, when I was a kid, I love helping people and inspiring and sharing and communicating. And now I've found a platform for that, which is my
Mm-hmm.
podcast or doing interviews with people like yourself. Like, this doesn't feel like work to me. I love this.
Totally.
This
Right
is
there
my
with you.
true authentic self, right? This is the
Mm-hmm.
stuff I love to do. So I just am really, really clear about who I am, what brings me joy. And that's all that it takes, is to just get really, really reconnected in with that person and then just try to live that every day.
Beautiful. Thank you for being here. I love this
Thank you.
conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.